Hi all, welcome to lesson 5 unit 11. Today we are doing proving quadrilaterals in the coordinate plane. Please print the lesson. If you do not have access to the printer, please copy this into your notes and try to find some graph paper. If you can't find graph paper, find a straight edge or a ruler, try to draw your axis and try to sketch all these shapes that are given to you, all the points that will be given to you, so that you know what shape you're working with, and it'll make it so much easier to understand these questions. Otherwise they get very challenging. Okay, so let's start with the do now. It says find the length of the given segment. If you look at this segment, it's already plotted. The 2 points were given. I cannot really count the boxes because you can't really count a diagonal line, right? We've talked about it in the past also. Diagonal lines you can't. If it was a straight line, yes, you just count the boxes, right? A horizontal or a vertical line, you can count boxes, but not a diagonal. So what do you do? You build a right triangle either at the bottom of the line, or you could have done it at the top also. I already had one at the bottom of the line, right? And working with one of these triangles, let's highlight it. And I'll highlight the bottom triangle. What kind of triangle do I get? I get a right triangle. So now what am I doing with my right triangle? I want to find this side. I'm just going to do it in, let's say yellow. I want to find this side, right? I want to find this side. So how do I find this? I already know any horizontal line, I can literally count the boxes. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is 2. If you know 2 sides of a right triangle, can you not find the third one? Yes, you can. It's the Pythagorean theorem, which is what? A square plus B square equals C square. So what's your A? It doesn't matter. And B doesn't really matter. It is always across from, this is your 90 degree. Across from 90 is your C. So this is what you have to know. So this is your C. This will be 5 square plus 2 square. It is 29 equals C square. Take the square root, always the last step of the Pythagorean theorem. C is square root of 29. So this length is, or the length of this line segment is square root of 29. This page, okay? So let's start. It says properties of quadrilaterals. You did the quadrilaterals unit. Some of you must have remembered. And what does it say? Which statement is true about every parallelogram? Let's quickly review the properties of parallelogram. So what is parallelogram? Parallelogram is something like this, right? All 4 sides are congruent. We know all 4 sides are not congruent. So that's not. The interior angles are all congruent. Nope. We know the opposite angles add to actually 180. Not all of them. Opposite angles are congruent. Adjacent angles add to 180. So it's not true. 2 pair of opposite sides are congruent. Yep. This is congruent to this. This is congruent to that. So it should be this, but let's check. The diagonals are perpendicular to each other. Nope. That is not true. The diagonals bisect each other. They are not perpendicular in a quadrilateral. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. If the diagonals of a quadrilateral do not bisect, some of you don't read the question, please read carefully. Do not bisect each other, then the quadrilateral could be the inner rectangle they bisect, rhombus they bisect, square, definitely it has to be choice D if you guessed it right. So D. Okay, that was very easy. Okay, I filled this out. We did that in our previous lessons also. Slope. Anytime you have, I'm going to use a highlighter, you have a line going up, read your graphs left to right. It is a positive slope. You have a line going down, negative slope. You have a flat line, constant slope, your slope is 0. And you have a vertical line, your slope is undefined. Okay, so we're going to be using that. Now, how do we work with our coordinate geometry proof? You're going to make a T-chart and you are going to find out, let's read the question. Make a T-chart with sides and slopes, fill that in, and then you know how to find slope. Slope is what? Rise over run. That's how we find slope, right? So here it says plots these points. I've already plotted them. Pause the video and plot them, please. Using slopes, determine if triangle OPQ is a right triangle. Okay, right triangle means what? We want to determine it's a right triangle. Means when these lines intersect, they should make 90 degrees, right? And what do you know about the slopes of these lines? Then the slope should be what? Negative reciprocals. So let's find the slopes of each one of them. Each of these sides and see if they are negative reciprocals of each other. I already wrote out all the sides. All you need to do is rise over run. So how much am I rising from O to Q? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2. So it is up 3, and the line is going what? Up. So it's 3 over 2, right? Now the next one is QP. Look at this line. If I was to trace it with a highlighter, it is going down, right? Do you agree? If I read it left to right, so it's going to be a negative slope. So negative slope, and how much am I going down? Rise is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, and the run is 1. So it's 4 over 1. So far, if I was to compare these two, they are not negative reciprocals, so these are not perpendicular. And the last one, PO or OP. What is the rise? Rise is 1. Again, look at the gradient. It's going down from left to right. I'm going to highlight it. It's going down, right? So my slope is, rise is 1. It's negative 1 over 3, right? None of these are negative reciprocals. So what do we write? You must answer using the question. This is your question. I'm going to put a star here. It says using slopes determine if OPQ is a right triangle. So I'm going to write here triangle OPQ is not a right triangle because there are no negative reciprocal slopes. Right? So that's what it is. Anytime you want to prove anything is perpendicular, you're going to write talk about the slopes. Okay, so let's move on to some more facts. Again, highly recommend you making flashcards out of these. It would be a great thing to do. So here, I already filled these out. You can take a moment to fill them out, and then we can go over it together. So parallelogram, show both pairs of opposite sides are parallel using slope. We're going to use that. So anytime you want to prove opposite sides are parallel, you use slope. Meaning, what do? You're going to do, I'm going to write here. If you're showing it, same slope. If the slope is same, opposite sides are parallel, right? Show both pairs of opposite sides are congruent using the Pythagorean theorem. Anytime you want to show that opposite sides are congruent, you do Pythagorean theorem because you're working with length. Show all rhombus. Rhombus, how do you prove if any shape or any quadrilateral is a rhombus? Show all 4 sides are congruent using the Pythagorean theorem. Rectangle, show all 4 right angles using slope, negative reciprocal slopes. And square, show all 4 sides are congruent using Pythagorean theorem because we're talking about the side lengths. And show all 4 right angles using slopes. Yes, if the slopes are negative reciprocals, we know they are they're perpendicular or they're making 90-degree angle. Trapezoid, show only 1 pair of sides parallel using slopes. You just need to show 1 pair. It's usually, I'm going to draw this picture so that you're not confused. This is what your trapezoid looks like, right? So you want to show that 1 pair is parallel. This is parallel. Okay. The other pair must be shown not to be parallel. So again, anytime you're showing parallel, you find the slope, rise over run, and all you do is compare the slopes. Isosceles trapezoid. The first thing you're going to do is prove this. First, you need to do this. So first thing you will do this, and this will be your second part to it. Show it's a trapezoid, then show the non-parallel sides, which would be these sides, are congruent using the Pythagorean theorem. So that for the isosceles trapezoid, you have to do a little bit more work than the regular trapezoid. So I really, really, really recommend you guys making those notes. Okay. So now what do I want you to do? Anytime we are proving our quadrilaterals, right? You want to first understand what is the question asking. Of course, sketch it, plot the points, draw the shape, And even though if it looks like, not necessary, it will be. So you have to prove it. So I would make a T-chart. The first column will always be your sides because there are 4 sides in a quadrilateral. So you'll have all your 4 sides. I like to go in order. Then you might have sometimes to do length and slopes, or sometimes just either or, depending on what the question is asking. Okay. And then in the end, there will be a conclusion, which I did it, which we'll talk about in a bit. Okay. I also wanted to talk about, take a moment to talk about, oh, we had already talked about the picture. I'm sorry. I thought I didn't talk about the picture. Anyways, I plotted this quadrilateral ABCD, and now what am I trying to do? I am trying to prove that it is a parallelogram. So what was the one fact about the parallelogram that we said? There were 2 facts. We can just pick one. So we're going to show that the opposite sides are what? Congruent. So if you're doing opposite sides are congruent, you're going to just say what? Use the Pythagorean theorem. And if the lines are not straight, right? If it's a straight line, you can just count it across. So AB, let's start with AB. It's a straight line. All you can do is just count the boxes. So it is what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It is 11. So AB is 11. So let's write that down. 11. The length is 11. Let's do just the length. Now BC. I drew a triangle. Why? Because if you see this, look at this. This is a diagonal length. You can't really find the length of a diagonal line, right? You would be half counting, miscounting the squares. So you make a right triangle around it so that it's easier to find the length. So now if I'm just going to make a right triangle, and that's your C, right? So what is this? This is 2. This down is 9, right? So do that. Do the Pythagorean theorem. So 2 square plus 9 square is equal to C square, which will happen to be your length BC. Simplify it. It is what? 85 equals C square. Take the square root, and I will get C is equal to square root of 85. So this length BC is square root of 85, right? You can fill it in here if you want. Square root of 85. I'm going to fill the other one also. This was 11. We were trying to prove it's a parallelogram, and we said we're trying to prove that opposite sides are congruent, right? So now let's do this one. This one here, if you count from C to D or DC, it is what? 11 again, right? You can just count. And the last one, this is 2, this is 9. Your right triangle, because again, AD was a diagonal line. You couldn't count the boxes, so you had to draw a right triangle around it. And if you draw it, I want to find this length, right? So it would be what? Let's write this down. DC, if you just didn't write A, is 11. And this one is, again, 2 square plus 9 square equals C square, right? So it is what? 85 equals C square. Last step is square root. So C is what? Square root of 85. You don't have to simplify, right? So that is enough to show that it is a parallelogram. But how do we show it is not a rhombus? Rhombus, what do you know? Rhombus, all sides are congruent. Are all the sides congruent? No, they're not all congruent, right? So we can show that it is not a rhombus. But how do I show it is a rectangle? If you go back to your previous page, we talked about that the rectangle, you want to prove that, you know what, all the angles are not right angles. So now we want to find slopes. So let's find the slopes for each sides. AB, remember we said if it's a horizontal line, it is, your slope is what? 0. Now the other one in red, BC, what's the slope for BC? It's, look at the line, it's going down, so it's going to be negative. Oops, I don't know. Negative slope, right? And what is the slope? The rise is 9 and the run is 2, right? And then DC, what's the slope for DC? Again, another horizontal line, slope is going to be 0. And I'm going to question DA, which is what? Opposite lines, so it is negative 9/2, right? So now, what do? We need to conclude. We need to talk about each thing. Let's sum it up. So let's start with it. It is a parallelogram. Why did we, what is one property of parallelogram? Because opposite sides, what? Both pairs of opposite sides are congruent, right? We just wrote that. Look, 11 matches with 11, radical 85 matches up with rad 85. Now the next thing, it is not a rhombus because all four sides are not congruent, right? All four sides are, I had to cram it in there, please guys, apologize for that, not congruent. And it is a rectangle because what do we say? The slopes are not, no negative reciprocal slopes. They're same, they're parallel, but they're not perpendicular. So let me just scroll down. No negative reciprocal slopes. Negative. It is very, very important for you to write this in the end. All these three things should be answered. Whatever the question is asking, you must answer. Again, pause the video and make a T-chart and try to do the question on your own. Okay. So let's start with example 3. So here it is asking me to two things. The first one was more crazier. Example 2 was a little bit more work than this one. So it's saying find me a rhombus. Prove quadrilateral. Math is a rhombus and not a square. Rhombus, we know all sides are what? Congruent. So we want to show it's all sides are congruent, but that's true in a square. What do we find? If we can say that these lines are not perpendicular, then we know it is not a square. So let's write out our lengths. So let's start with MA, side MA, right? We drew the triangle. We want to find the length. Again, it's a diagonal line. It was a diagonal line, and that is why I drew a right triangle around it. And now I am going to use my Pythagorean theorem to find that length MA. This side is how much? 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 and 3, right? So it is going to be 4 square plus 3 square equals c square. So which is 25 equals c square. Last step is square root. So c is what? Square root of 25 is 5. So 5, right? What's my next one? Length AT. If it's a horizontal line, what do? Just count the boxes, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It is 5. Right? Now the next one, TH. TH is how much? This is 3 and this is 4. So I'm going to do 3 square plus 4 square is equal to c square. Solve it and you'll see if they are equal. You see the work and take the square root and gives me c is equal to 5. Right? Okay. And the last one, which is HM. It's a horizontal line, so I don't need to build a triangle around it. All I need to do is count the boxes, which is 5. Right? So you see all the sides are 5, 5, 5, 5. Right? It means what? That it is a rhombus, right? But I need to prove it's not a square. So what do? I need to find the slopes. So again, you're already done. It's a very quick thing. It's rise over run. So what is 8 MA? What is the slope for MA? First of all, the line is going down, so it's going to be a negative slope. And the rise is 4 over 3. AT, it's a horizontal line. Flat line, slope is 0, right? Then we have TH. It's a line going down. The slope should be, your rise is 4. different color. It's red. I used it. I just want. I'm gonna keep it the same color, so it's easier for you. Rise is 4/3, and then you're left with the last one, which is MH, which is the slope is 0 because it's a horizontal line. Okay, this was just the easy work. Do you see how for each question we're doing lengths and slopes, or just length or just slope? So we'll be doing that for most part of this lesson. Now let's answer this. It says math is a rhombus because all 4 sides are congruent. That's the symbol for congruent, right? And now it is not. Math is not a square. I'm going to slide up because what did we say? All sides my bad are congruent. We're saying it's not a square. My bad. I'm sorry about that. So math is not a square because no negative reciprocal slopes. That's what I was going to say. Math is not a square because no negative reciprocal slopes to show perpendicular lines. Right? So no right angles. It's okay. So the more you write, the better off you are, and you must have this explanation. It is a must. If you do not write this, you do not get full credit. So please make sure you do that. Again, pause the video, try the next question on your own, and then we'll take it from there. Okay. So now I already have plotted those points, and I also built my triangles around them. And now let's get started. So again, it says prove the quadrilateral NATS is a rhombus. This one's easy because we just did one of those, right? The previous one. How do we prove something's a rhombus? All you need to do is find length. So here we're not even finding slope. That's what I was talking about. Sometimes you have to find both lengths and slope. Sometimes you just can do away with length. So what is the length of NA? It is again a diagonal line. So you're going to build a right triangle around it and find those slopes. So what are these numbers? This is 5 and this is 5. So let's work it up. 5 square plus 5 square is equal to c square, which is what? 50 equals c square. So c is what? Square root of 50. Right, we took the square root and the square root cancel out, and c is 50. 80, not a horizontal line, so let's do green. Look here. This is not a straight or horizontal line, so we do need to do what? Build a triangle, and this was what? 7, right? Okay, so this is 7, this is 1, so it's going to be what? 7 square plus 1 square equals c square. 50 equals c square. Take the square root. C is equal to square root of 50. Oh, we're getting, do you see? Two of them are same. Hopefully, we get TS and SN same. They should be same. If you don't get them same, then you know that you made a mistake. Okay, so now our TS. This is what? 5 and 5. Isn't it the same thing? So let's do, but you must show the work. Even though it's same, you have to show the work. 5 square plus 5 square equals c square. It is 50 equals c square. Take the square root. So c is what? Square root of 50. And the last one is this. This is 9. Oops. What happened? 9. And this is 1. So it is what? 1 square. Up. Not 9. My bad. It's 7. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yep. It's 7. I don't know why I wrote 9. It is 7. So 1 square plus 7 square equals c square, which is 50 equals c square. Take the square root. So c is equal to square root of 50. you got all these numbers to be 50, right? Square root of 50. So what do I say? NATS is a rhombus because, yes, very good. If you all thought about that, all four sides are congruent. And that's it. Try independent practice for homework. Upload it onto the Canvas website. And you guys have a great day. Bye-bye.